Crockett and Associates at the Alamo. What are you going to try next? Franklin and Sons at Independence Hall? Could you please outline for the committee what type of sophisticated methods GAO employed to bypass all of the SBA new security controls?
Yeah, as we do in all of our testing, we use publicly available hardware, software, and materials. In this particular case, we set up websites for these companies. We had computers, email, and we stole the addresses you see effectively. We used addresses of companies or the Alamo in the one case to really test it. So I would say it was not a highly sophisticated operation, basic software and computers, emails, and backup phone numbers.
Administrator Mills, SBA has come before this committee several times in the past years and said that there is either no problem or it's been fixed. Let me take a minute to read to you some of the SBA responses over the years. On March 25th, 2009, Acting Administrator Darrell Hurston testified that SBA has undertaken aggressive procedures. They are undergoing right now a business process re-engineering where they are looking at all of the elements of the program and they are establishing the necessary corrections. Administrator Mills, on July 29, 2009, you testified that we have tightened it up. We require more documentation already, but we are also going to do a business process re-engineering of it. We did the extra 600 visits. Administrator Mills, on November 18, 2009, testified, we actually have changed our certification process. We now ask for extensive documentation and are working through how to make sure we get the right documentation up front. And finally, Administrator Mills, on April 10, 2010, we're working to ensure that only legitimate, eligible firms are benefiting from the HubZone program. So as you can see, there is a web of double talk here. SBA come before the committee and said that they're doing one thing, but GAO is finding that you're doing another. So what are you going to do differently this time to make sure that we are not having the same conversation 3 months from now?
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, for raising this issue because these are shared goals. We agree with the GAO and with this committee that it's very difficult to have integrity in the program when firms that are ineligible are getting into it. So we see this as a process of continuous improvement. This has been a program that, as you point out, has had many of these issues over time. As I described, we have developed a three-pronged approach. The 4 firms that the GAO just described really fall into the first category, which is the issue is certification. Why can a firm which is not an eligible firm get into the program? And that is something that we have, as I described earlier, created a new set of criteria that had not existed before, where we are asking our companies to submit extensive documentation. And we actually, I think, distributed to the committee in our report to Congress exactly what that documentation includes. And I can talk about some of it if it's of interest. But we are taking that specific documentation now in a much more rigorous oversight process. We have not yet seen the GAO report with the details of how this got through the process. But what we...
how do you think that Crockett, what is the name, and Alamo's Associates, and Associates at the Alamo?
Well, exactly. We're going to find out, and we're going to find the facts.
Last time
of how
you came here, you said
happen.
that you will be using Google Earth, right? You said it, to do a internet search, and that you will use any kind of tools to validate HubZone addresses.
Right.
Here you have this one, not on 4. So last time you said, this is just so simple. Do you know how many firms are participating in the Hub Zone program right now? 9,000.
Yes.
How much it will take to Google the address of 30 seconds. So it will take at least 77.5 hours of hours to determine whether or not those are bogus addresses.
In fact, we are currently using tools such as Google Earth to find out the addresses and principal locations of the workers who are reported to be in the hub zone. One of the suggestions I believe that Mr. Kuntz may suggest is that we use Google Maps to Google these addresses, and in fact, we have already discussed this recommendation given these preliminary findings.
Okay, I'm going to switch to another topic, and that is the oil spill. Recently, Kenneth Feinberg testified before our committee, and at the time, my understanding was that he and the SBA had not talked. Now, I understand that has changed, and my question concerns how SBA treats BP claim payments for those seeking disaster loans. To this point, it is important that the SBA recognize BP claims payment as income, not as compensation for losses. Are you taking steps to ensure that this will happen?
Optimized content
Thank you
stands
for
a
your
better
interest
chance.
and your help with the BP claims process coordinating with the SBA. In fact, as you and I talked, we did make contact right after that hearing with Ken Feinberg. He called in return to my phone call. We had several conversations and meetings and consultations, because what the people in the Gulf need is a BP claims process that works. We are currently in the Gulf in 27 locations. We have 178 people, but we believe, and we are giving, we're doing two things. We're giving economic injury disaster loans, and we are deferring existing disaster loans, because sometimes that's all a small business needs is just to defer it.
Yeah, but okay, I hear all that,
Okay.
but I would like for you to answer my question, and that is, if SBA is going to recognize BP claims payments as income, not as compensation for losses, and are you taking steps to ensure that this will happen?
Well, that's actually a very good question, and I'm going to get back to you on whether we are, because at the moment, the primary focus is to have people get their first claim from BP. So in our actual claims places, we are helping people fill out BP paperwork, referring them to the proper BP claims place, because it's better for them to get their proper compensation.
Yeah, I would like to share
First.
with you that the chair of the Senate committee agreed with me that BP claims payment should be considered income and not as compensation for losses. Administrator Mills, in 2003, Diamond Ventures brought a lawsuit against the SBA alleging racial discrimination in the SBIC program. Earlier this year, a federal judge denied SBA's motion for a summary judgment and subsequently ordered mediation in this case. I understand that the court-ordered mediation period recently came to a close without a settlement. Why haven't you been able to resolve this issue?
I will get back to you on that issue, and we'll see why.
Well, I just want to make clear that your own statistics, SBA's own statistics, show that less than 4% of all SBIC investment dollars went to minority-owned firms, and less than 1.5% went to women-owned businesses. And at the time of Diamond's lawsuit, there were only a handful of minority investment firms in the program. So I hope that you're paying attention to that, because I don't think that it needs for someone to bring a lawsuit for you to realize that this disparity is taking place among the SBIC companies.
Thank you. We agree. I'll look at it too.
Mr. Kutz, in your opinion, are the enforcement mechanisms implemented by SBA to punish those that violate eligibility standards for the HUBZone program sufficient?
I would say no. I mean, I think we're better off than we were 2 years ago because, as you've heard, 24 of the 29 firms we looked at are no longer in the program. We validated that. They're not in the system. They cannot get HUBZone contracts. And it sounds like there's been additional suspensions. So, but are we where we need to be? No, I believe more quick, aggressive action. I think the example I used in my opening statement of the firm that committed 8A fraud also and then received $10 million of stimulus contracts, it's still never too late. They still did suspend them. It's never too late to make it right, but and to protect the government, but it should have been done earlier. So I think it's still, there's a lot, on a scale of 1 to 10, maybe a 3 is where I would say we are at this point.
Administrator Mills, what kind of message do you think they send to individuals looking to game the system that only 1 out of 29, with the exception of the 4 that you just mentioned that happened yesterday, maybe because we were having this hearing today?
Well, Madam Chair, you're exactly right. If we don't punish the bad actors, people will not be deterred. So we have, as our third prong, made a concerted change in terms of going after bad actors. So to that extent, we actually have a whole series of tools that we're employing. Suspension, debarment, collaboration with the Inspector General, civil fraud actions with the Department of Justice, and false claims actions with the Department of Justice. In addition, now when you sign the HUBZone contract, it's under penalty of perjury and it has to be notarized. So all of these activities should give us more basis to do what you so rightly urge us to do, which is to go after bad actors.
Mr. Kutz, you have been looking at the HUBZone program for a number of years now. Why is this program so vulnerable to fraud?
I think it's a combination of some of the inherent nature of the difficulty of maintaining the 35% perhaps in some areas like Washington where you've got slivers of HUBZone locations. In those places it's difficult to perhaps police and look over. So it's the inherent nature, and then in addition to that, just some of the lack of fraud prevention controls and consequences in the past. I mean, most companies look at this and say, hey, if I cheat, I get to keep the contract. If I get caught, I might get decertified. Chances of going to jail are 0, and I might not get suspended or debarred. Now, that's changing hopefully here, and I appreciate the oversight here and the efforts SBA is making. So we need to move more aggressively to get where we need to be.
Okay. Mr. Graves.